Hi, everyone. Good morning. How are you guys today? I hope everybody is doing well. We are going to be talking about Harmony Montgomery today once we get everybody in here. Kind of again, a last minute live. Streaming when I can, guys. Streaming when I can. Just have to make sure that you are subscribed and select uh, get notifications, all notifications. That way you can see whenever I do these pop up lives because half the time I don't even tell my moderators. I just kind of come on whenever I have a few minutes, and today we are going to be discussing Harmony Montgomery, the fact that she is still missing. Her mama has this lawsuit going on, as most of you guys know, and Adam has been granted more time for his appeal process. They are really trying to fight the fact that he was found guilty on all of those charges, rightfully so. But we are going to take a look at that. Good morning, Red Rock. Hi, Salty Sea. It's so good to see you. I've been, worried about you. I know you were affected by a lot of the things that happened over in North Carolina, and so I'm glad to see you this morning. I hope everything is well. I hope you guys are getting everything rebuilt and that everybody is doing good. And so like I said, lots to discuss this morning as we're going into things. Another thing we're going to take a look at is a channel called Comfort Cases. Did have Blair and Jonathan Miller on. And so I'm going to drop their link to this video. Honestly, nowhere near enough views on it. They only got around 206 views on the actual video that they did with this man. And so we're going to take a look at that live stream as well, and see what all Jonathan and Blair had to say about the foster care system and how it's continuing to fail children essentially, and how it needs uh, changed, how things need to change, and not to go into politics too much because this is not necessarily a political live, but I do think that a lot of the issues with our governments and the systems in place and things like that do have a lot to do with politics in the end, and the way things are funded, the way things happen. And one of the things that Trump did sign recently is actually something to go through and reform the CPS and try to figure out where all these wasted funds are going. And so I'm excited for that change because that's something that we have addressed on this channel many times over. The fact that they are not necessarily underfunded. There are plenty of funds that are going to DCYF, CPS, things like that. But the problem is it gets to the state level, and then the states are able to misappropriate those funds however they deem necessary. Essentially, what typically happens is they're like, oh, we're going to give CPS. I'm just going to make up numbers here. We're going to give CPS, $1 trillion this year, and then the state's like, oh, okay, cool, $1 trillion. But then the state turns around and they only give CPS 1 billion of that $1 trillion. And this is way over exaggerated and again, just random made up numbers, but they only give them like a tenth of what they're supposed to. And the offices are meant to figure out how to pay their employees to go through these cases. Some of these workers are seeing anywhere from 90 to 200 kids a week. And it's just absolutely insane to think in 40 hours that you can see and check on that many children and actually do your due diligence in that. And so the workers are underpaid in my opinion, but it's not for lack of funding. It's for the fact that the funds are not being actually used for what they're said to. So that's kind of, just my little spiel on the CPS funding and things like that. Hopefully, it's something that can get fixed to make sure that the workers who are doing these jobs are actually getting paid for what they're doing, that they can hire more workers, that they can make that a career worth getting into financially, and especially with the emotional strain and drain that those people have, to make them want to do the best of their job to the best of their ability. And I think that most of them are in there for the right reasons. Um, but I do think that again, the states being able to pull that funding and pad their budgets in other locations and use it for other reasons, it's not right. It needs to go to the children. It needs to go to that system. And so hopefully with the review of that system, we can get some of that fixed and it can get better. It can never be worse. So, yeah, things are coming together slowly. I totally understand. I mean, being off social media a lot, I get it. I totally get it. And so, like I said, good to see you though, coming in. And I hope that everything continues to get better. So the first thing I want to talk about is from January 23rd, the New Hampshire Supreme Court did give Adam Montgomery's attorneys more time to file for an appeal of the murder sentence. And so let me switch over to this article here. And so this is actually from January 23rd. So we are a little bit behind in going over this information. Some of you may have seen this, but I know that there is probably a lot of people also who haven't, because a lot of times at the end of trial, people kind of lose track of the cases and don't follow them nearly as closely. And so, gonna kind of wrap everything up into a little bow that's happened since trial. And so it says the New Hampshire Supreme Court is giving attorneys for Adam Montgomery more time to work on their appeal for his murder conviction. The attorneys are challenging key evidence brought up in trial of the man convicted of killing his 5-year-old daughter, Harmony. One of the moments cited in the appeal is when the senior assistant attorney general Ben Agati stood up at Montgomery's sentencing and offered him one last chance to explain where the remains of his daughter had been dumped. Montgomery's attorneys are raising 14 points in their appeal. Last year, he was convicted of killing his daughter in 2019. He was sentenced to 56 years to life in prison. That's aside from the previous charges that he had for his gun conviction, if you guys remember. So much of what the attorneys are challenging is known as 404 evidence. That's when evidence of other crimes a defendant has committed is brought up at trial. In the Montgomery case, prosecutors used evidence of his previous alleged abuse of his wife and daughter. The legal analyst and former prosecutor Patricia LaFrance said that outside evidence is usually not allowed, but there are exceptions, and it will be up to the Supreme Court to decide if the judge was correct in letting the jury hear it. So, if the Supreme Court says no way that this is no way this is too prejudicial enough that it reverses, it's always the gamble when you take when you're attempting to bring in 404 evidence. The filings and appeal are now due in March. So he has just a few weeks to get this stuff together if he is still intending to appeal. And it sounds like they're going to. Hi Ramblin' Rome, how are you? It sounds like they do intend to file these appeals. For example, the 14 different points that they are putting together for this. I'd be interested to see how the Supreme Court rules. I really think that whenever it comes down to it, Adam Montgomery was guilty. He was found guilty in the court of law. It's very clear to me that a person who drags his daughter's remains around the way that he did and kept her with him for months and things like that, that he was very highly involved in this case, and I do think um, that he deserved to be found guilty. Hi, B Tim, how are you? No, it's okay, Ramblin'. Thank you. Just kind of me ranting in the in the beginning about CPS. So, with that being said, though, I do think that there are points in the trial that I still have questions about. I mean, I'm always probably going to have questions, and this is my personal opinion about Kayla's involvement in everything. I do still have questions about the exact way that Harmony died and if Kayla could have been more involved in that. But does that mean that Adam should walk free or get a new trial or any of those things? No. I just wish that they wouldn't have done the deal with Kayla that they did. But unfortunately, we can't go back from that. We can't change the fact that they had already given her that deal, and we're kind of stuck with the outcome of that. I personally hope that Kayla, stays clean or gets clean if she's not. I don't know her current status, and does read her life. Um, does lead her life in a better direction than what she currently did, just for the simple fact that I hope that no one else suffers at the hands of her. Because I do think that she also was involved, in my opinion, in Harmony's abuse and her death, potentially, whether it was led by drugs or whatever the circumstance. I hate that she's out there walking free. Hi, BC. Hi, BGOG. How are you? Good to see you guys. Welcome, welcome. So, but that's just, I really think that we're going to be in a situation though where this is all just going to get tossed aside, just like most appeals. That Adam's not going to have a snowball's chance to get out of there. Hi, Libby. So, here we go. So the next thing I want to take a look at is the video from the Millers. So I do want to, like I said, show you guys comfort cases. This video honestly should have gotten way more views than what it did. The Millers came on with comfort cases to discuss the systems. And let's see here. And I hope that everybody goes over, subscribes, gives them a like, follow, all the things. But this is a conversation about the systems. So let me see here. Whoa, where'd it go? Okay. So it's actually a two-part. So part one, he had other individuals on. Part two, he had.
It's so hard to believe that already.
So let me move this around a little bit. Sorry about that. So we're not going to watch the whole video. We're going to jump to when they join him.
Change.
Well, thank you so much for having us. Appreciate all the work you do, and I feel like we know you so well and everything we've connected over the years, and thanks for everything you do.
Well, you know what? The fact is that I absolutely admire both of you, and you having three boys and me, I understand it with four boys, and raising five kids, my husband and I, and we are so connected in so many ways. And so, as much as I love to sit here and talk about, what we've all done, I really want to talk about Harmony. I want people to say her name. I think it's important that when anything happens like this, we have got to not forget to say their names, because I think by not saying their names, we're not putting a face to them. So here's this little girl, Harmony, who comes into a shattered foster care system. Tell me exactly how it all started for her.
Well, as so much of what we hear is the tragedy of her story. And, she was in a situation where she was in and out of foster care, just like our youngest son, Jameson, was. And them being siblings, they were in foster homes together. They would go into a foster home, try to be reunited, go back into a foster home. And there were constant issues, constant traumas for both of them.
And so this is why I want to review this before we go through the lawsuit, because they do talk about some of the things that the kids went through and why the system needs to change. There is no reason, in my opinion, that Adam even had a chance to get Harmony, period. Um, in my opinion, long before Adam was let out of jail, Harmony should have been put up for permanent adoption, and and that Crystal should have had her parental rights terminated long before her saying for Harmony to go to Adam was ever even a thing. Period. And she can debate whether or not she said it. She can debate it all she wants. It's in the documents that her lawyers advocated for Harmony to go to Adam. And I really think that shouldn't have even been an option for Crystal, in my opinion, to have that decision to make, because at that point she had already failed these children so many times. Harmony spent more time in foster care, more time with her foster parents than she ever did with Crystal, than she ever did with Adam. And it's just wrong that Harmony was bounced time and time and time again from foster care to Crystal, foster care to Crystal, foster care to Crystal. I mean, that many bounces, it's just not healthy for a child, and what it does to their or to their mental health. It's just not okay. And the effects that the foster care system has on people, the effects that going through the adoption process and being in and out of that system has on people. That's why I truly believe that there needs to be follow-up care for these children. there needs to be some type of system in place so that once you hit this system, whether you are returned to your family, whether you are in foster care, whether you are adopted, once you have hit this system, in my opinion, it should be mandatory for whoever is in charge of your well-being after that point, that you should have to go to mental health counseling for several years, in my opinion, after going through that process. I mean, at the end of the day, that follow-up care would help us see cases like Harmony, where she was abused and eventually murdered. It would help us see cases like Oakley Carlson, who was returned to her family and was abused and likely murdered. It would help us see cases like Ariel Sellers, aka Isabella Kalua, who was adopted but being abused and eventually murdered in her adoptive home. It would help us see cases like Classic and Sincere, aka Orrin and Orson West, for whenever they were abused and eventually murdered. Right? Follow-up care, it would be one of the simplest things, and those are just well-known names, guys. This happens in hundreds of thousands of homes, this abuse, once they have gone through this system. And that is not to say that every single person who fosters a child or adopts a child is a bad person. That is not to say that every single person who gets their child back is a bad person. However, for the safety of our children and for their mental health and their well-being after the case, follow-up care would be such an easy thing to implement to make sure that these kids are emotionally healthy going forward, in my opinion. These guys are a great example of success cases, right? They have fostered and adopted several children, including Jameson, which is Harmony's brother, and have been raising them in a happy, healthy, loving home, right? In a good environment. No, Ramblin', you you go ahead. You go ahead. You do not have to sit on your hands and just listen, because I get it. I get why you're frustrated with all of it. I really do.
And it got to a point where they were trying to figure out the legal system, trying to figure out what to do with both of them. Harmony got reunited with her biological dad, who's different than Jameson's biological dad. And Harmony went that way. And then soon after, Jameson was up for adoption. We knew he was going to go down that path. So that's the simplistic way of what happened. And once we got involved, one of our first questions, once we knew that Jameson was going to join our family, one of our first questions was, well, what's the situation with Harmony? Because we knew instantly they had a close bond.
So, Jonathan, where was the birth mother?
So she was in and out of their life. She would come to some foster care visits. And, this was like very so real. And someone that doesn't understand foster care, or it's not in the trenches in this, they don't really understand. It's a sterile room. It was basically a closet with a ripped up couch. And this is where she would come and visit her children. Sometimes she was there. Sometimes she was on time. Sometimes she was hours late. And then sometimes she just wasn't there at all because of the battle she was overcoming. She also grew up in foster care with her 5 siblings. They were all in foster care. They were all separated. So this path, it just continued. And the day we adopted Jameson, or started fostering to adopt him, the social worker said, "We are shocked that the judge gave custody to the birth father, someone that knew Harmony less than 40 hours. He had spent less than 40 hours with her. He had just been out of jail for attempted murder. He got off on a technicality." And they said that the judge gave custody because of the caseload, and the lawyers had all agreed that this was in Harmony's best interest to go with a possible convicted murderer, a career criminal, to send a child that has special needs back into that home, to rip her and Jameson apart. They were sometimes in foster care together. They went to a lot of respite care because the foster parents didn't always keep them. And so then they would go from one home to the next, to the next. And Rob, one thing I think about, the day we picked up Jameson, it was a grocery bag, actually. That was everything, and broken trains. I have a picture. It's 2 bags, and one was like a ripped up Disney bag, and his toys were just really torn apart. But in there was an Elmo doll and a Mickey Mouse. And that was very special. And so when we first met Jameson, he actually told us his name was Mickey Mouse, not Jameson. Because even at that age, he was protecting what he knew because he felt so vulnerable, So when it came for his birthday, he asked for his birthday to get his sister a new Elmo doll. And sadly, he never got that opportunity to give it to her because we failed Harmony. Everyone failed her. She was a number. She did not matter.
And that's what I see so often, as I travel the country and I, go and meet children and hear these stories. These kids have turned into numbers. That is all they have become, disposable children. And I see more and more states are so dead set on reunification, no matter how bad that reunification is. And then what happens is we see kids like Harmony who become what we call the boomerang kids, the kids who are in and out of the system and the trauma that they continue to keep pinging, continue to keep building. We failed this little girl. And to hear that a judge, and by the way, it wasn't only the judge. It was the
Of
social
course.
worker. It
Yep.
was the guardian of litem. It was every single person that had anything to do when they touched Harmony's file, because all she
Mhm.
was a file, to allow her to go to a convicted. Let me tell you, as a dad of five who, when our children came to us, same situation, half the time the birth parents didn't show for visits. The room was, we finally went to the judge and petitioned the judge to allow us to be the supervisor of the visits so we could move the visits to more of a place that was more fun. So we would do the park or we would do Chuck E. Cheese's. But then again, they wouldn't show, you
Yeah.
know. Again, they wouldn't show. And the thing that people need to understand, and Blair, I'd like for you to chime in on this, is the thing is that we're always going to have foster care. Okay. The thing is that we know that it's shattered, but if there was something that we could do differently immediately, what do you see that? I mean, you as a news anchor person, you hear a lot of these stories and so see a lot of these stories. What do you see that we as a society could do better?
We only hear about the foster system when there's a tragedy. We only hear about the foster system when a child dies. We only hear about the foster system when we know the system is broken and gives no hope to people. There's so much that needs to be done. And so much that starts with compassion and making sure that we're putting kids in homes where they belong, whether it's with adopted families like us or reunification. Just because you're being reunited with a biological parent doesn't make it okay. What's being done to make sure that these children are going to doctor's visits, that they're going to school, that they're being fed, that they have clothes? You know what it's like when you're going through the adoption process. We know what it's like when you're going through the adoption process. They're asking us everything about, who we hung out with when we were in fifth grade.
Yes.
The background is extensive. There's nothing that we keep from when you're going through that process, and we welcome that. That's what it should be. I'm glad the process with each one of our boys was very thorough. I'm so thankful for that. When we moved to DC from Boston after we adopted Jameson, we had a social worker come down from Boston into our house, spend a day with us just to make sure Jameson was getting what he needed, that he was in a healthy environment, that he was going to school, he was going to the doctor. That didn't happen in Harmony, but how many more kids is that happening to, where the system is not going to make sure that kids are in the best interest of what they need? So I think it's pretty simple. I think it's pretty basic. The fact that this has not changed in so much time, in so many cases, not just Harmonies, but so many more. There are countless. What has been done to change it? Nothing. And it blows my mind every time we sit down and talk about it.
And it's so simple to change. It is so simple. Literally just follow up care to make sure that these individuals are actually taking care of their children. Like I said, whether it's fostered, adopted, whether it's reunification, just somebody making sure that they are taking care of them. This is the channel who is interviewing them. His name is Comfort Cases. So Comfort Cases had them on. This is the link to that. Again, nowhere near enough views on this video because they're only sitting at around, what is it, like 200 views, did I say? Yeah, 206 views. And it just needs more people to see it. More people to see it because it's so important, this broken system.
Yeah, and you're exactly right. I mean, I think about the fact we've never had a first lady who has ever taken up a platform of foster care. Okay, never. And we have no one who is out there giving a voice except for when a child dies. And then all of a sudden, everybody points fingers, and everybody, wants to step back and say, "Well, I didn't." When the fact is that we all need to step forward and say, "We did." We actually failed Harmony. What made you guys decide that you wanted to put this in writing?
I think. Go ahead, John.
I think for us, because Harmony's story needs to be out there. What happened to Harmony, everyone needs to know. And it needs to know because we need to educate people. It's not nearly as beautiful as people think when you think of adoption and foster care. The difference that was given to Jameson between Harmony, again, Harmony was just a number, and it takes a village to raise these children. Like Blair said, we had a social worker, a lawyer, fly down to Virginia to make sure Jameson was safe. If one person would have treated Harmony the same way, she would maybe still be here today. It was a systematic failure. The social worker in New Hampshire didn't care enough about Harmony that he didn't even get out of his vehicle to make sure she was safe after it was a report that she was being punched in the face. He looked at her from the car and said, "She looks okay. I see her
For
walking with her dad."
seconds.
Like, that's inhumane. We treat animals in an animal shelter so much better than that. Think about what you have to do to get your dog back if animal control picks them up. None of that happened for Harmony. She was a number, she was a caseload, and this is mind-blowing. This seems such like an easy fix to me that we say, first of all, where's the ICPC laws? They should transfer from state to state to state, just like we all had to do when we adopted our children, right? And then siblings matter. Siblings bond matter. These two, Harmony was basically Jameson's caregiver, even though was blind in one eye. She had a disability. They were both born addicted to opioids or meth. And you know what? Nothing was done when she was handed back over to that monster. There was no follow-up to see if she was getting medical care. There was no follow-up to see if she was in school. So Blair and I think, let's start at Massachusetts. This is an easy change. Of course, people want to help children, right? The pushback we've got in saying this is political, this is making DCF and children's and families, it's putting their privacy in the public, and they're not comfortable with that. And why aren't they comfortable with it is the question.
So that is the same pushback we got whenever they were trying to pass it in Hawaii for follow-up care and monitoring the children in Hawaii. Same thing. Everybody came out screaming about their Fourth Amendment rights. And I continue to say, where is the right of these children to make sure that they are safe once they have gone through this system? It's horrible. It's horrible that people are so concerned about keeping things private in your households, and fighting against follow-up care for these kids. I don't even think necessarily that the social workers need to come into your house to see the children, but there dang sure better be something in place soon that makes sure that these kids are going to doctor's appointments, to make sure that they are enrolled in school at the appropriate age. There has to be some type of follow-up to make sure that they're not just being murdered by their parents. I mean, it's happening too much, guys. Whether it's their foster parents, adoptive parents, or their biological parents, it's just happening too much. I mean, how many cases have we seen over the past couple months even just come out again saying that, oh, this child has been missing for 4 years and nobody noticed. This child's been missing for 5 years, and they think that he's deceased now. BC, what's that case? Hold on one second. I gotta pull it up because I don't even know his name, and I was just talking about him the other day. Hold on. We have this one. 4 years after her disappearance, her remains were found. How do you go 4 years without knowing that a child is missing
I think those
to have
two
to find her
children would have gone.
remains 4 years later? Why? Why did nobody notice that Kennedy was missing? She vanished in 2020, and it wasn't until September of 24 that people started investigating her disappearance. That's one. Here's the other one. His name is Hayden. And again, no one even knows that Hayden was missing. Nobody even realized. And now his dad is dead. His dad committed suicide, I believe, and nobody has any clue where Hayden is. It's been 5 years since his family has seen him. There's no follow-up to make sure. He was placed back in this home with his dad against grandpa saying, "Hey, do not put him back with my son. My son cannot handle this. He cannot be a good parent." And all of those things was fighting against it. And Hayden is missing and believed to be deceased now. And we're having so many cases that are like this. Thank you, BC. We're having so many cases that are like this. It's not just one and done, guys. It's so many. Even Megan Boswell, we just watched that. Granted, it only took 2 months to figure out that Evelyn was missing, but Megan Boswell herself had been in the system. Megan was pregnant with her through the system. If there was any follow-up for Megan to make sure that Megan was doing well, I mean, granted, though, she did turn 18 first, so maybe not as much with the Evelyn Boswell case, but she instantly was able to lie and say that her daughter was taken and given to the other parent and things like that. And Evelyn was deceased. It took months before people noticed. Why? Oh, that's my point with her. She missed her doctor's appointments. Megan was able to call and cancel her doctor's appointment and say that she was going to move to a different provider's office. Never requested records to be sent. Never requested for the doctor's office themselves to actually help her find another doctor or to send the records to anywhere. And nobody noticed that Evelyn didn't go to her appointments, never got her 1 year checkups, and 2 months later she was deceased. If the doctor's office would have followed up instantly and said, okay, which office are we sending the records to? And followed up to make sure that little Evelyn would have actually gone to that doctor's office and actually attended an appointment, could they have found out that she was deceased quicker? Could we have been in a situation where she wasn't missing for long periods of time first, and maybe there would have been better evidence in her trial? Thank God Megan was still found guilty, but it was a very slippery case. I mean, to the point where Grizzly had to do a video after the trial was over saying the timeline of the trial, because so many people who even sat here and watched the trial did not feel like they had enough information coming out of trial to figure out how she was convicted. Literally did not know the timeline because the prosecutor just did not present that strong of a case. The alert for Kennedy came from her killer. I believe if she had made that call, no one would know about her still. Right? It's crazy. It's crazy, and it just happens too often because of the lack of follow-up for in our systems for our children. Nobody is making sure that these people are not killing their kids. And let me be completely honest here. I think that probably I'll say like 85% of parents are genuinely trying to raise their kids right and things like that. And so that type of follow-up care, it sucks to think like, oh, we're going to suffer for the 15% of people that are, it's probably higher than that. I hate to say that, but it's probably higher than that. But I'll say, in a made up statistic, like 15% of people are abusing and or hurting their kids in some way, shape, or form, neglecting their children, starving them to death, beating them, murdering their children. Out of the 100% of kids, like 15% are suffering on a day-to-day basis. And like I said, sadly, it's probably a lot higher than that. But if we had some type of system in place to make sure that those children were being taken care of, would that still be happening? I don't know. I don't know. To make sure that they were going to doctor's appointments, to make sure that they were attending school if they were enrolled in school. Now, don't get me wrong, I homeschool my kids. I do think that homeschool is something that you should be allowed to do. But in my state, we have to have mandated reporters see our children. We have to have doctor's visits at the beginning of each year. We have to have dental appointments. We have to have eye doctor appointments. We have to turn all of those records in. We also are involved in our area in co-ops and things like that where again you're seeing mandated reporters, right? And I hate that there has to be systems like that in place, because I am all for less government involvement, less restrictions and things like that for most cases. But at this point, I think that there are too many children being failed on a day-to-day basis that we do have to have some type of follow-up care involved.
I'm going to tell you right now, because it's an industry that makes money on the backs of children. And that's all it is an industry that makes money on the backs of children. Every
Right.
attorney that walks into that courtroom, and by the way, let me tell you something. When the judge awarded our children to us and we had to go to trial, because we were gay men, we didn't get the free adoption. We actually had to actually hire an attorney to go to our adoption. But when not one birth parent showed up for the trial continued on. And then the attorneys of the birth parents who are given to them then filed appeals. Appeal number one, appeal number two. Again, nobody showed up but just us. And so it's an industry that makes money on the backs of children. And that's why Harmony was just a number. And that's why the state does not want you to pull the onion back. Because when you start pulling it back, you see the continuing fail after fail after fail. The fact is that the author actually told me that you all are actually donating the funds to this, which is absolutely amazing. There's nothing better than good humans who give back. And so everybody, every time you purchase this book is, and by the way, take it from somebody. I've told you this. I've written children's books. I've written. We don't make a ton of money on books, okay? So, but everything that when you buy this book, it's actually going to be donated. You guys decided to donate to
The Dave Thomas Foundation.
Dave. Okay, so let me
Yep.
tell you something. Love Dave Thomas
Yeah.
Foundation. Rita is one of my very dear
Great.
friends. She's been my co-host on the my podcast. I have her on speed dial, and I love the fact because I actually was just talking to Rita not long ago. And you guys are amazing that you're doing that because Dave
Well,
is amazing.
I'm on the board for the Dave Thomas Foundation for Adoption, and when we were talking with Carol about this book, one of the first things we said to her was, what the public perception of this. We don't. This is not about us. It's not about us making money. We don't want it to be perceived as trying to get on the New York Times bestseller. That's not what it's about at all. But there's going to be. We realize people are going to buy this. What's going to happen then? And she said the same thing. Let's find an organization that do that and that can benefit from that. It made sense for a number of reasons. As you know, the Dave Thomas Foundation for Adoption is incredible, and love the work that we're doing there. And it just seems like a perfect fit. So when I got a chance to tell Rita, this is what I think we're going to do. Of course, as you know, she's amazing and was very excited about that.
Yeah, she is a great human, as I
Yeah.
said, and I'm very lucky that I get to call her my friend. The fact is that as Jameson grows, how are you all? And I actually read and well, the letter that he wanted the judge to hear about his sister, it made me cry again this morning. But I know that you two are the type of people that you continue to talk about Harmony. You continue to give her a voice. How is Jameson doing?
I think most days he's a typical 8-year-old. He's learning to ride his bike and scooter, but every now and then he'll look at you and say, "Why did she have to die? Why did someone hurt her? I have her glasses." And he holds on to glasses that are a replica of hers that someone sent him. And if he's having a bad day or if he's sad or at night, sometimes I'll go in his room and they're just held in his hand. And we tell him what he can comprehend. But we get very worried about one day where he goes, "Why was she not protected and I was?"
Yeah,
Like why did that happen?
yeah.
Before we knew everything, I can remember a doorbell ringing, and one of our older boys, Zeker Cash, said, "It's a kid at the door." And he goes, "Maybe she found me." And he ran to the door looking for his sister, but she had been beat to death because no one protected her.
No one protected her. No one protected her. The
Well,
fact is you talk about, the siblings that are separated. I'm the youngest of 10 who grew up in the system. We were all separated. And I remember when my daughter and my son, they first arrived, they were 2 and 4, and my son has fetal alcohol syndrome. And I remember the social worker literally looked at Reese and I and said to us, "Are you sure you want this one? We can just leave you with his sister, and we can find another placement for him because he's never going to talk or never going to walk."
Mm.
It was like this kid didn't even matter. It was like, what do you mean you're going to separate him from his sister that he's been with, since he was born? He's 2 years old, she's 4, and immediately in her mind it was just like, well, maybe we didn't want to handle a child with a disability. And by the way, my son Kai, he runs, he talks, he walks, he loves. He's the president of his SGA. And by the way, now he drives and drives me crazy.
that's awesome.
So the fact is kids are resilient, and Jameson's resilient and your other boys. And I think a lot of it has to do with the nurturing and the love that we as parents give. And I think that is so important because not all foster parents are bad. I want people to understand that. Not all foster homes are dangerous. But the fact is that we have to do a better job at really looking at where we're placing these kids, even if you're placing them back with biological family members. And I think that is the fail for us as a nation, is that we think just because blood runs within these kids and with these bio parents, that immediately they're going to take them back and they're going to open their arms, they're going to love. But here's a prime example where her biological father did nothing but kill her.
And he's right. I mean, and there is actually thank you so much, Ramblin. Here's the link for that. Thank you so much. There is actually too another case that we watched, an Ariel Sellers case, Isabella Kalua. We watched the children go into the system, her siblings. She had multiple siblings. And two of her siblings had went to an aunt who had fought for custody, fought the other aunt, fought the grandma. They had went to her home and through the tragedy as it was occurring and things like that. And ultimately, she had them for a month, almost a month and a half, and decided that she couldn't handle their issues. Essentially, is how it was phrased. She couldn't handle the issues that they had, and so she sent them back to a system and big sis got put into a group home, and nobody even reached out to grandma to let her know that they had been sent back. And it's frustrating, because that just adds to the trauma. Not only were they, yes, the money grab aunt. Yes, absolutely, B. Tim. She had raised funds and did all the things to get the kids, was doing T-shirt sales and everything else so that she could fight against Grandma Julie, and then had the kids for like a month and a half, and sent them back. And it just adds to the trauma, because not only were these kids failed by their birth parents who were on drugs and things like that, and then they were put into a system where they were systematically abused, put into dog crates, and then eventually their sister was murdered. Big sis was made to carry her murdered sister's body to a bedroom, and then they finally were getting granted reprieve and sent to a different family member, and just to be sent back, rejected again. And so you can't imagine the amount of mental health effects that that has on a child, to be constantly rejected, and to be constantly going through those types of situations. And so thankfully she is with another aunt now, and Grandma Julie, like, they kind of are working together in her care. But also the aunt that currently has her is a school teacher, and she has a lot of mental health resources and things like that at her fingertips to help her through that process. Not to mention the counseling and things like that that they have the children in. But it's just sad, because if there was actual care to where these children were going, and if there was actual follow up to these systems, would stuff like that happen? Would stuff like that really be able to happen in case after case after case after case after case? And again, this is not to negate the fact that there are a lot of foster parents who are amazing people, not to negate the fact that a lot of people who go through systems and get their children back, for example, if they go through drug rehabilitation and things like that and get custody of their children back, sometimes they can live a whole new life because they genuinely do get clean and do the right thing for their children. Not to say that people who adopt children are all bad. Like, there are a lot of people who adopt children and do not kill them. But I do feel like there are so many failures at this point that we are seeing. And like they said at the beginning of this, we only react whenever we see a failure. We only react whenever we see the child's face that died, and people get in an uproar, and they get upset for a few months. They get upset for a few months after the case happens and things like that. And then things fizzle out, and then it gets brushed under the proverbial rug, and nobody talks about it anymore. And so I'm glad to see that Blair and Jonathan are continuing to follow up and push for this follow up care, push for this system to change, push for ICP laws to go from state to state. And I do hope that other families who have been affected by trauma like this can also continue to push for change, and hopefully at some point we can have a system that protects children, by removing the ones who need to be removed, and making sure that there is follow-up care once they are removed, to make sure that they continue to be safe through the system, so we can see little Johnny, little Susie, little Harmony, whoever it is that's in this system, so that we can see them grow up to be successful, happy, healthy people, and so that we're not looking at them as case number 102543 or whatever, and not just another file sitting on a judge's desk, not just another file sitting on these workers' desks. That, like I said, a lot of these DCYF workers or CPS workers, depending on your state, they're looking at a caseload of anywhere from 90 to 200 cases a week. Oftentimes, how do you see 90 kids in a 40-hour time period whenever you have to drive from home to home to home? We need that line of work to be more incentivized, so that the people who are in it for the right reasons can go there and work and make a living wage, and be in a situation where they can go and care about these children, to make sure that the appropriate levels of follow-up are being done. But I also think that the systems in place need to include things outside of DCYF, outside of CPS. And the reason for that is we can't put everything on one system, because whenever you're seeing a system that has continuously quote unquote failed children, why rely just on that one system? And that's why I think that doctors' offices and things like that need to be involved. They need to uh, they need to do their part to follow up on these individual children whenever no one shows up for their doctor's appointments. Whenever a child is leaving your office and then there's no follow-up as to where they went and no one ever requested records, why? What happened to that 3-year-old that you never seen again? What happened to that 1-year-old that you never seen again? There has to be something in the system with these children. I mean, as soon as, especially like before kindergarten age, because I feel like once they're enrolled in school, it's harder to just make them disappear. But cases like Harmony's, like cases like Harmony's, where you're having a situation where she should have gotten enrolled in school and she never did, or Hayden's case, you know, never got enrolled in school. How do we catch that? Well, okay, where's Hayden's doctor? What was Hayden's last doctor visit? When did the follow-up stop for that? You know, I don't know. There just needs to be something in place to make sure that they're okay once they hit the system and are going back to their families or to wherever. So, that's just my spiel. And you guys are gonna. I always push on the follow up care, but it's frustrating to know how much she was failed, and then to watch her mom now doing these lawsuits. And is it to hold them accountable? Do they need held accountable? Absolutely. I think that there was failures that took place, that New Hampshire, Manchester, like, they need held accountable. But do I think that she should financially get to benefit from it? My opinion, no. Why? You failed her first. You failed her first multiple times, failed her over and over and over again, and then advocated for her through your lawyers to go into the home that inevitably led to her murder. And so for you to sit there and say that somehow it was New Hampshire's lack of responsibility, basically, that led to her death, you put her there first. So why do you get money for it? I just I can't with that, but we'll get into that more in just a minute. Let these guys finish.
But kill her. Listen, everybody, the book is called A Cruel Injustice. Yeah, this is a must read, a must read. And let me tell you something. Once you read it, buy a second copy and give it to someone else. Because the only way that we as a nation are going to see change within our foster care system is if we educate ourselves about kids like Harmony. Because I'm telling you, in this country, Harmony is just, this isn't just a one up. It's happening everywhere, not just in this state, but throughout our country. Guys, I have to tell you, I can't thank you enough. I
Thank
feel like
you.
we're family.
We are.
Reese sends his love, and I can't wait for us to get together. And I love seeing the boys growing. And the fact is that this book will sit on my shelf, and I will always remember Harmony. And thank you for sharing your story.
Thank you, Rob.
Thanks.
I mean, you're amazing. We're so appreciative of what you do and the spotlight you bring to things like this, but so many other avenues, and we're so thankful, so grateful, and appreciate your friendship and love.
Rob, is what I say to often people is, and especially you for doing this, is Harmony didn't have a voice for several years, and thank you for being a part of her voice. It really matters. And one day we want to show Jameson when he asks the hard questions is people like this, they really cared about your sister.
And we did love her. And I say to people all the time, and remember this as you're watching this, you do not have to know someone to love someone. You truly don't have to know someone to love someone. And these children, over 400,000 kids in the United States, they deserve our love. So until next time, this is another episode of Fostering Change. Continue to go out there and be a good human. Take care.
Yeah, no problem, Ramblin'. Whenever I seen, because it had been posted in the Facebook group, but whenever I had seen that it hadn't gotten very many views, I was like, no, people need to see this. They need to see what the Millers have to say about everything. Um, because it's frustrating. It's frustrating to watch there continuously be no follow up. And the laws, like I said, they just get swept under the rug. People try to pass it for a few months. You get uh, a few political leaders that'll really start pushing for the different laws and things like that on the height and on the backs of the publicity that come from these cases, and they get elected into office with the idea that they're going to make a change, and um, they're going to push these new laws and things like that. And then, like so many other promises that political people do, they fall flat, and nobody actually follows up. And then next thing you know, we're in a situation where we have the next case and the next case and the next case and the next case. And I remember back whenever, for example, Gabriel Fernandez's case happened, we heard not one more child. Not one more child will fall through the proverbial cracks. Not one more child will have to go through this, and there will be a change in the system. And how many one more children have there been since that day? How many one more children have there been since Harmony's case? How many one more children have there been since Classic and Sincere, aka Orin and Orson? How many have there been since Ariel Sellers, aka Isabella Kalua? How many have there been? And it's too many. It's too many at this time. I mean, and I can name countless children. That's the problem. I shouldn't have to sit here and scroll through a list to see all of the names. There's just been too many to actually call them all into my memory, even just in the last 3 years, 4 years almost that I've been on YouTube. And it's just disturbing. Or Twitch, if you're watching from Twitch. Hello to whoever is there. Appreciate you so much for tuning in. And it's just really, really frustrating. So let me pull this up. No, he's definitely not falling flat right now, Rich Buddy. Were HIPAA laws designed to protect the children or the child predators? I think that's a good question, Lioness. Because whenever it comes right down to it, some of the things that they're trying to protect right now through these systems, for example, whenever they tried to outlaw parents from being able to see the medical records for children who were transitioning through their school systems, and through their doctor's offices and things like that, that's wrong. It's wrong. Um, and so I I don't know. I think that privacy laws are good but bad in the same token, because I don't want Joe Schmo down the road to be able to look at my kids' files. I don't want Joe Schmo down the road to be able to pull things up. Heck, I don't even want some of my own family members to be able to look at my personal information, because sometimes family members can overstep the bounds and do some crazy stuff, right? But it in the reality, whenever it comes to professionals like a doctor's office, or like lawyers or police officers and things like that, I think they should have a certain level of ability to look at our files. You know, should DCYF have been able to just look at Harmony's files to see if she had been going to doctors' offices and things like that? Yes, I think so. I think so. I think that school systems, to make sure that your child is still alive if they're starting to miss weeks and weeks of school, like Madalena Kojakari, can they follow up and make sure, oh, if you're saying that your child is sick and the doctor said she has to be off, can I look at can I call their doctor's office as your school and say, hey, did Madalena Kojakari actually come to the doctor's office because she was sick, or has she been dead for the last 2 weeks or missing? Right? We don't know if she's dead. I don't know. I think it's a very slippery slope, because I do agree that there needs to be a certain level of protection from the government, because unfortunately not everybody in government has the right things in mind. However, however, I also am fully aware that child abusers, child predators, child murderers, and things like that utilize the red tape in these systems to be able to hide their crimes against children. And so that's where the slippery freaking slope is, right? Um, it's a borderline of watching child protective services take away children that should have never been taken out of their homes, because of because of whatever reason, but then also watching them leave children in their homes that should have been removed a long time ago, like Oakley Carlson's case. And so it's a very, very, very slippery slope. And that's why we're in this situation, because no two people are ever going to agree fully on the right thing as far as what they can have access to. But as far as actually seeing the information in the documents and what took place during appointments and things like that, I don't know if that's necessary, but maybe attendance to the appointments. Can we maybe see, like, yes, okay, Madalena did for sure go to the doctors this week. That did actually happen. Or in Evelyn's case, no, she never had her records transferred to say that she went to a different doctor's office. Or Harmony's, no one ever followed up with the medications that she was supposed to be on. No one ever followed up with her eye care appointments. No one ever registered her for school. Like, all of that should have raised red flags in some type of system way, way sooner. And so it's just a very, very frustrating chain of events. Rich Buddy, we're probably going to agree to disagree on that fact. I do think that, yes, like Dennis Vaughn Jr., that is a really good example. A really good example. I do think that there are cases where children have to be removed from their homes and that they should not be in the homes that they're in. And so that's why CPS exists, because children do get abused, period. But I think if there was some type of follow-up and care in place, some type of system in place to make sure that these kids were emotionally healthy, that they were going through some type of program or something with a mandated reporter, after touching this system, that it would cut out a lot of things. It would cut out so many things. Just imagine if Harmony, after being placed back with Adam, had to see a mental health counselor once every 2 weeks after that, or once a week, or something along those lines. Imagine if Harmony would have been sitting down with a counselor week after week and being asked, how's everything going, Harmony? Are you doing okay? And helping her work through the different traumas that she had been placed in by her mother, who failed her over and over and over and over again, and put her into the system and out of the system and into the system and out of the system, and then put her with this abusive monster. Um, would it have been caught way sooner, way before death, that Harmony was being abused if she was seeing a counselor on a week to 2 week basis? Yeah, probably. And I'm going to tell you something. This excuse that because Crystal was raised in foster care, and so that's why she had no choice but to become this generational failure because it happened to her. Maybe that excuse wouldn't exist anymore if we were doing appropriate follow-up care, and Crystal would have gotten counseling and help to grow and become a decent human being, instead of becoming a revolving door for the system. Right, he wouldn't have even applied for custody with that much attention. I agree. These monsters would have not even done it. Rich, I think that that's why we have to reform the system. We have to make changes. We have to add things to make it be something that can work. But let me get into this because I only got a few minutes left before I have to start work. And so it says, the lawsuit filed by the mother of Harmony Montgomery is detailing new allegations against the state of New Hampshire. Crystal Story accuses the Division of Children, Youth, and Families of failing to respond to reports of abuse that were made months before Harmony was murdered by her father. Yeah, breaking the cycle. We need to. I agree, Dawn. The system does internal investigations. When they mess up, they need an outside entity to be over them. I agree with that. I agree with that. To make sure that people are held accountable. Zori originally filed her lawsuit in September, but earlier this month, her attorney filed a revised version with additional information about why Zori and her attorney said the state failed to protect the girl. The lawsuit was filed against the state of New Hampshire and the Department of Health Services and DCYF, and it highlights 17 different reports that were made to DCYF in the months before Harmony died. And this is where we go back into the fact that this funding and things like that being investigated is a good thing, because a lot of the funding, and we have showed this on my channel before, there are videos about the CPS funding and what actually happens to it, DCYF funding and things like that, what actually happens to it. You get awarded the funding for each state based off of how many kids are in the system, based off of how many kids are expected to be in the system and things like that. And then the state government takes it from there. They give a small portion of it actually to their DCYF, and then they use the rest of it to pad other parts of their budgets. And so it's not a lack of funding, it's a lack of the state actually putting the funding where it is supposed to go. I think if most states actually put the funding where it belonged, we would not see the overworked, underpaid staff that we do. We would see more people who were wanting to work in these systems and wanting to help children if they were paid a fair wage. And we would see more people hired and less caseloads on each desk. I think the average worker in New Hampshire, let me see right now. DCYF. Whenever we looked at this back, whenever this case was first going on, the average caseworker had around 90 cases on their desk at the time of Harmony's disappearance. And so you think about, how does one caseworker see 90 cases in a 40-hour week? And it's so horrible. And how do you actually make the time to do that? And so you end up with crap like this. 17 different reports that were made that nobody investigated properly. We heard him testify that he's seen her for less than 20 seconds from his car. When after like Blair, or like Jonathan said, that she had been reported to be punched in the face. He's seen her from across the parking lot, across the road. Numerous caseworkers, and they say the system's broken, so fix it. That's them saying it. Yeah, they get a bonus for adopting kids if they can. That's not okay. Yeah. There's a whole lot of things that are broken. So it says the lawsuits detail one report that say that Harmony was being molested by people who stayed in the Montgomery family's home. This is something that we had thought probably was going on during trial. And I know that I personally, I hated to even say it, but based off of the amount of accidents and things like that she was starting to happen when she was staying with Adam and all these other drug users that he was surrounded with, it would not shock me for even a second if Kayla and Adam were selling her to people for drugs even. Because they've seen her as nothing but a paycheck, in my opinion. Yeah, that's it. A lot of caseworkers are wanting it fixed. I agree. Yeah, they don't. They don't see all the kids. That's the problem. That is the problem. BC, there are a lot of states that have like financial grants that they get paid and things like that based off of how many kids are adopted out, how many are in foster care, how many are reunited and things like that. And that, again, that's all back in that video where I broke down the different types of funding. Dawn is not incorrect for that. They are incentivized for the amount of children are removed and things like that from the homes. It's 100%. But I agree. Crystal filing the lawsuit proves she saw nothing but a paycheck over her children. I agree with that. That's my opinion as well. I can't speak for Crystal, and I don't know that to be fact, but the way that things seem to me, I totally understand. So the lawsuit accused Demetrios of a child protection social worker for failing to appropriately respond to another report about Harmony having a black eye. Speaking with News 9 over the phone Monday, he said that he did in his former position was directed by a supervisor. I doubt that. I doubt your supervisor said to see her from across the way and not even check on her. And in my opinion, this guy should be facing jail time. That's my opinion. I wish that was a thing, because he completely neglected to do his job and completely, in my opinion, was part of Harmony's abuse in a way. But should Crystal Story be given boatloads of cash because this guy because this guy failed to do his job, should she get boatloads of cash? No, I don't think so. So it says Harmony's father, Adam Montgomery, was convicted earlier this year of murdering 5-year-old girl in 2019. She was first reported missing by police on New Year's Eve. Her remains have never been found. Story declined to comment on the new filing Monday, and her attorney has not returned requests for comment. The New Hampshire Attorney General's office, which represents the state, said that it would review the complaint and respond in due course. So we'll see what ends up happening with that. What if that actually happened and we got to rock the system, right? I don't know. Hi, Ocean Tide. How are you? So I don't know. We're going to go down through in a different live, though, and go through the entire lawsuit and everything that they're alleging, so that we can really take a look at what she's saying. And then I'm going to compare what they are saying in the lawsuit. And I am going to show you guys things that she has posted on social media that completely contradict, whether it's in comments sections, whether it's wherever, things that she has said in different interviews and everywhere that completely contradict things that are filed in the lawsuit. And so it makes you wonder, where does the truth lie, right? Um, because Crystal has walked herself back on so many statements and changes her story from day to day, and it just depends on who she's talking to. And I think that's part of the reason why they tried not to ask her too many questions on the stand during trial, in my opinion. So, but I am going to have to jump off here because I do have to start work, and then we will talk about this some more another day and go through those documents. So. For sure, rambling. Absolutely. So, all right, guys, I love you all so much, and I will talk to you guys all later. Have a good day. Bye.